go to work, stop arguing about who's winning, and let's get the government open.
Madam President, I rise to speak about President Trump's shutdown and the real pain that it is causing in my home state of Wisconsin and in communities across this country. The Trump shutdown is now in its 21st day, tying the longest federal government shutdown on record. Today is also the day that approximately 800,000 federal workers won't get their regularly scheduled paychecks, including approximately 3,000 Wisconsinites. Many of these workers are doing their jobs without pay. Coast Guard workers, Transportation Security Administration agents, air traffic controllers, along with federal law enforcement, including FBI and DEA agents. These hardworking Americans are suffering because President Trump and Republicans in Congress refuse to support bipartisan legislation to end this shutdown and reopen the government. We should be working today to pass bipartisan legislation to end this senseless and useless shutdown and reopen the government. Sadly, no votes are scheduled today by the Senate Majority Leader, meaning that the Trump shutdown will continue. The House did their job and passed bipartisan legislation to end the Trump shutdown. But Senate Majority Leader McConnell has thus far objected to bringing this legislation up in the Senate. In fact, yesterday, I joined many of my colleagues on this Senate floor in an effort to pass, once again, bipartisan legislation to reopen the government. But Majority Leader McConnell blocked our efforts, and the pain will continue for so many across this country. Why is the government shut down? Over the past 3 years, President Trump has publicly promised well over 200 times that Mexico would pay for his wall. Now he has shut down our government over his failure to keep his promise. He even said that he takes pride in this Trump shutdown. The American people shouldn't pay for this deception, and Congress should not make taxpayers pay billions of dollars for his wasteful and ineffective wall. What we should do instead is reopen the government and pass bipartisan Homeland Security legislation, again supported by both Democrats and Republicans, that provides smart and cost-effective border security. President Trump's shutdown has many consequences, and he has created many victims. I want to speak about some of the pain Wisconsinites are feeling. In Wisconsin, the Trump shutdown is hurting farmers and rural communities, and it really could not come at a worse time. Wisconsin lost over 600 dairy farms last year and over 500 the year before. In response, Congress worked together on a bipartisan basis to pass a farm bill that would support our farmers and our rural economy. But unfortunately, with this shutdown, President Trump has threatened all of that progress. His shutdown is stalling the implementation of the bipartisan farm bill and delaying things like subsidy payments and loans that farmers need to get ready for the spring planting season and plan how they will endure in these very uncertain market conditions. We've heard from farmers about the pain that the Trump shutdown is causing them. Here's one story. Michael Slattery, he's a grain farmer from Manitowoc County, Wisconsin, and he is waiting on $9,000 that the Department of Agriculture agreed to pay him to compensate him for the losses from the president's trade war and for conservation efforts that he participates in his farm. Mr. Slattery planned to use this money to get ready for the upcoming planting season. But now that's all on hold. To quote Mr. Slattery, "We're being played the stooge." He's right. Farmers like him have suffered enough under this administration, and the Trump shutdown is just another blow for Mr. Slattery and farmers like him across Wisconsin and the entire nation. I also heard from Kelly. Kelly lives in Black River Falls, Wisconsin. Kelly has a disability, and she also takes care of a grandchild with a disability. Kelly received funding from the Department of Agriculture, including a program that specifically helps low-income and underserved people in rural communities. The USDA had agreed to help her close on a home and to help her make some immediate home repairs. But now the funding is on hold, and she can't pay the contractor who made the repairs, and she's also having trouble paying the mortgage on her new home. What is the Department of Agriculture doing to help or assist Kelly? Well, right now, nothing. She can't even get information from the USDA because of the Trump shutdown. People like Kelly and Michael should not have to suffer because President Trump broke a promise to make Mexico pay for an ineffective border wall. Democrats and Republicans agree that President Trump should end his shutdown and accept bipartisan legislation to fund the Department of Agriculture and reopen other agencies in the government. In fact, the House passed bipartisan legislation just yesterday to fund the USDA and reopen it for business. Unfortunately, the Senate Majority Leader is blocking that legislation too. I am calling for a vote in the United States Senate on the House-passed legislation to fund the government, which Senate Republicans previously have supported, and would reopen the federal government and finally end the Trump shutdown. We should pass this legislation, and the president should sign this legislation so that this shutdown ends for people like Kelly, people like Mike, people in rural communities, and all communities across Wisconsin. Madam President, I yield the floor.
Thank you. I would just like to take the floor to sort of continue comments that I began at 10 o'clock this morning. I left at 10.